What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel once again. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Omtech compact 60-watt Mopa integrated fiber laser, and they were kind enough to send this to me to check out and review, so that's what we're going to do. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this all unboxed, set up, laid out on the table, and let's take a look at this. So I got this unboxed and laid out on the table, and this was everything that it came with. You do have the machine itself, the stand, the arm that the laser head goes on, the laser head itself, the power cord, this big long ruler, the USB cables, flash drive, Allen keys, screws, keys, some safety goggles, the user manual, and they actually did throw in the f160 lens to go along with this as well. So taking a look at the machine right out of the box, you can see the emergency stop, and it does have a key to lock it just for safety purposes. Now over on the back, you do have the power cable for the ground wire if you need it, the power cord itself, the on-off switch. You do have a slot for the foot pedal and also for the rotary access if you have that as well. And over here, you do have a spot for the USB cable. Right on top of the machine as well shows all the specs you're going to need for the Galvo. And it does have this incredibly long fiber laser cord. I'm not exactly quite sure why it's this long, but that's okay. I guess you have extra. I don't really know, but it is incredibly long. So taking a look at the user manual, it doesn't actually give instructions on how to put this together. It's basically more of just a safety instruction manual, and that's pretty much it. But this is pretty straightforward, as I've put together a couple of these before in the past, and it is pretty simple. It's just a few screws to bolt the arm on and then the laser head on top as well. So I'll get this put together and then we'll go from there. So I got this all set up, and I did place the little tie downs on top of the machine just so I don't lose them for the time being. On top of the machine, you can see the focus switch that will emit the two red dots to help you focus onto the piece that you're engraving. You also have the adjustment knob on the left-hand side to raise it up and down to get the correct focus. So on the front of the laser head itself, it does have this little sticker that shows the focal length, and it does say that the distance is 330 millimeters from the workpiece to this line. So all that's left to do now is get this connected to the computer and hooked up to LightBurn using this flash drive that was provided. And I'll also use the little key. We'll get that inserted and we can turn that and make sure that is not on the stop position. Okay, so here I am over in LightBurn, and I do have the flash drive already opened and copied onto my computer. I just transferred all the files onto here, that way I have it locally. And you do have the driver, this JSF folder, which looks like it's just a bunch of fonts and other stuff, so I'm not going to worry about that. You have the software that does include EasyCAD and everything you're going to need. LightBurn you will have to download separately if you want to use that, which I will be using. And it does have all these extra perimeter fields in case you need to use them for EasyCAD. It doesn't have any files for LightBurn, but that's okay. Now when you want to import your machine, you will just need to go into software and you will go to plug, and you will need this Mark CFG 7 file. So I have already added it in to my list of devices, but if you want to add it again, you can just go into devices, click on find my laser. I'll just create it manually just to show you how to do it. And I'll click on, this is JCC Viper, click yes. You'll import the EasyCAD config. I'll go into software, I'll go into that plug folder, and I'll click on the mark config 7 and click open. And here you can see all the perimeters that are set up. And as I showed earlier, on top of the machine, it does have a list of the scale, the bulge, the skew, and everything you're going to need if you want to put those in manually as well, or if you swap out the lens and you need to change those. So I can click next. I do know that for this lens that I'm using is 150 millimeters, and I'll just call this, I'm going to end up deleting this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'll just name it Omtech 2. Make sure you do have these dimensions set properly. Click next, origin is at the front, and I'll click finish. And now I have this all inside. And now if I go and I click on it, I do have this new one, and it is all set up and ready to go as well. Now I will just delete this one as I've already installed it, so I don't need to have it twice. So I'm just going to remove this one and click OK. And now I can go back, Omtech 60 watt, 150 millimeter lens, and we're all set. Now if you do change out your lenses, it is a good idea to just create a brand new one and do the same thing we just did, but label it with, instead of the 150 millimeter lens, I'll change it to 110, and I will have to then run some tests and adjust the skew, the bulge, and the scale and everything like that to get it all set up. Now since this machine doesn't have an autofocus, I will have to focus this manually, and in order to do this, I can just create a little square, and I'm going to set this, put it at 0, 0. I'll keep it as a fill. I'm just going to adjust some of these parameters. I'll set this to 0.01 angle. I'm just going to keep it at 0. I'm going to set the max power to 100%, and the speed, I'm going to set this relatively low. I'll set it to 200 millimeters per second. And that should be just fine to test this out. I will just get this centered by pressing P on the keyboard. And now we'll place down the material. And for this test, I'm just going to use a piece of scrap aluminum. This way I can adjust the focus. Now I know that what they told me is that it's 330 millimeters. So I do have it set to that right now. But I will show you as you adjust it up or down. You want to find the correct height where the laser is going to be the strongest. And you can typically know that by hearing it and seeing it. But make sure you wear your safety goggles before you continue. That way you don't hurt your eyes in case it goes askew and laser burns your eyes. So now I'll click on frame, and I'll click on just run continuously. That way, while I'm testing to see the power as it's burning, it doesn't automatically stop. It'll just continue to keep on going. That way I'll be able to find the best focus. So I'll click start, and then I will adjust the laser as needed. So here you can hear the laser beam, and if I adjust this and make it lower, you can see that it does get weaker, and as I go up, it gets stronger. If I keep going up, it gets weaker again. So what you want is to find it where it's the strongest amount of energy, and you hear it and you can see it as the loudest. So probably right about there seems good, so I can go ahead and stop it now. So if we take a look at that, you can see that it marked it, and you can see where it lost power when I raised and moved it. And if I want to check the focal length now, I can use this ruler. I'll place it on top. And as you can see, it is right at 330 millimeters, which is what they said it's supposed to be at. So since I do have the correct height now, I don't need this focus switch anymore. I can turn off that button. That way it's not projecting it. So now that we have it in the correct focus, I no longer need this. I can close out of this, and I can also just delete that box because I won't be needing it anymore. So now it's actually time to run some tests, and for this first one, I'm just going to do a little marking. Now I've done a bunch of tests before on these 60 watts, so I kind of already know the parameters that I will need, but it's always a good idea to run new ones just to be safe because you never really know what's going to happen with different lasers. So I'm just going to run a simple material test, and I'll just click on a count of 5, count of 5 for this one as well. and I'm just going to run speed versus power. I'm not going to go into frequency or nanoseconds or anything like that for the Q pulse. So I'm just going to keep it relatively simple for this one. And the minimum speed, I'm going to do 500, and the max I'll do, let's do 2500. And for the power, I'll do 10% up to 100%. I don't need this big of boxes. Let's just do 3 millimeters, and I'll do 3 millimeters on that as well. I can click on preview, and I don't need this big gigantic border as well, so I'm just going to delete that. I can preview it again, and I can adjust some of these settings for the frequency, Q pulse, and interval. So I can go into edit. I'll edit the text setting first. And let's see, I'm going to set this a little bit lower. I'll set it to 46. The power I'll set to 95, that's fine. And the speed at 1000, that should be fine too. The line interval I'll set to, we'll put it at 0.03. Scan angle I'm just going to set to 0. I only want one pass for that. I can turn off auto rotate. Angle increment will set to 0. Go past 1. That looks okay for there. And on material settings, I will set this to 46 for the frequency. The Q pulse I'll keep at 200. The max power needs to be at 100. And the speed, since I'm changing these, it really doesn't matter what I sent these to because these will be adjusted. But for the line interval, I'll do 0.03 on that as well. Number of passes 1. And that all looks fine. I can go back now and go into preview. And that's what it's going to be cutting based on the power. So click OK. We can get this all framed up. And we'll hit start. So as you can see, I did place a new piece of test material down. And this is just a piece of aluminum. So I'm just going to set that right in the corner. And we'll click start and see how this engraves. So now with that finished, let's take a look at it. And here you can see the different power scales, and you can see how it did at a frequency of 45, Q pulse of 200, and whether it's 10% or 100%, and the speed from 500 up to 1000. So that just gives me an idea of what it's going to look like when I'm engraving certain things or marking anything. So I am going to run that same exact test on a piece of copper that I have. And this is just a scrap piece. So I will just place this one down. I will adjust the focus to make sure this is the correct height, which it is a little bit thinner than this piece, so I will need to lower it just slightly. So I can just use this ruler, place it down and lower it just a little bit to where we're at that 330 millimeters. So that should be the correct focus, and I'll run this test again. So with that one finished, let's take a look. And you can see how much whiter it is at 32% power compared to the 10%, and then going off the difference, if I kind of put these side to side, here you can kind of see it, a difference in the marking that it did on copper compared to aluminum. So since I have an idea of what it's going to leave on a marking on both copper and aluminum, I am just going to try and do an engraving of an image onto this piece of aluminum and see how that turns out. So back over on the computer, I did just grab an image off of Google, and I just typed in, vector image, and that's what popped up. I am just going to trace this image, and I can zoom in by using the scroll wheel and adjust the threshold if I need to, but that actually just seems like it should be okay. So I can click OK, and that removed all the background. So now I have the vector, and I will need to resize this so that it'll fit on the workpiece. So if I go to 50, that might be okay. Frame real quick just to see the area that it's going to leave. Now for the speed and power, if I do go off of the power scale test that I ran, I think I could be just fine with about 80% power. Setting the speed 500. Frequency I'll set to 46. Q pulse I'll leave at 200. And the line interval, I have this at 0.03, but I'm actually going to go a little bit smaller to 0.025. And I'll keep this on scan angle of 0. Just one pass should be okay. I'll click OK. We'll get this framed up, and let's see how this turns out. So with that finished, we'll take a look at it. It is still rather hot, but I think that turned out really good. And it all kind of depends on the angle you're kind of looking at it too, on how well it turns out. There is some dust. But overall, I think that turned out great. Now I can probably adjust some of the settings, speed this up, adjust the power, and make this go quicker, which this really didn't take that long, about 1.5 minutes total. So not too bad, but I definitely could adjust some settings and make that a little bit quicker. So I'm gonna continue to run some more tests on this machine, and I'll do that off camera. That way I don't sit here and show each one. So I'll do that all off camera, and then we'll come back right after that. Now I will try some stainless steel. We'll try and get some color on here. We'll try some more aluminum, maybe some more copper, maybe some different material, leather or something like that. But I'll go and do all that, and then we'll be back right after that. Okay, so I ran a bunch more tests on this, and I'll show those right now. And first up, I'll just show I did some leather. And as you can see, I think that turned out really good, and this definitely didn't take long at all. I tried engraving a rock, and this one actually, I did tumble this one originally, but I didn't get a really good shine on it, so I just kind of left it, but it is rather flat. But I just engraved this little smiley face, and I think that turned out really good. I tried engraving brass coins, and here is the Goonies one. I did model this up. And this one overall took, for both sides, about 2 hours total. It was about an hour for each side. But again, I think the detail turned out really good. Let's see if I can get in a little bit closer. And I also tried a bunch of stainless steel to try and get some color. And here you can see the results of that. On the back, you can see I did try a whole bunch of different settings and running some power grids. And since I am already familiar with some of the colors, it didn't really take that long to try and get the colors that I was looking for. But as you can see, I think it turned out really good. Here's also just a sample of some tests I ran. They did supply this one right here, so I ran that using EasyCAD instead of LightBurn. But you can see a few little mistakes that I did do that didn't really turn out right, and some that kind of screwed up. But overall, I think it turned out good. So now I'll go over some things that I really like about this machine and some things that I think could just be a little bit better. So first, I like how this came packaged. It didn't come beat up or barely in a box. It did have foam all around it just to make sure that nothing got damaged. Setting this up was a breeze. It only took a couple minutes just to bolt in a few screws on the arm and the head itself, and then just plugging on the cords in the back. Getting this set up in LightBurn was fairly simple. All you just needed to do was use the files that came on the USB flash drive and make sure you get them installed. Now, if you are switching back between EasyCAD and LightBurn, there are different drivers that you'll need for each one, so you will have to swap them back, but it's really not that big of a deal, and it only takes a few seconds. I do like the power that this 60 watt puts out, paired with this lens. As you can see, it was able to engrave some rocks fairly deep, and this really didn't take long at all. I could have gone a lot deeper, and I only ran this one for, I think, 15 passes, which probably only took maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So if I wanted to run this a lot longer, I could have got that a lot deeper, but this does put out a tremendous amount of power for 60 watts. I do like that in order to turn this on, it does come with a pair of keys. That way, if you don't want this being used by anybody else, you can simply take the key out and no one else will be able to use this machine. It also has the emergency stop button, so if you're engraving something and something's going wrong or you catch a fire, simply tap the emergency switch and that'll instantly turn off the machine. Give it a little twist and that'll turn it right back on. I do like that this was very easy to focus. You do just need to go off of the little line that they display right here, and using the ruler, you can easily measure it to the height of your piece on where you need it to be. Now, this is a manual focus, so you will just need to turn this knob up and down in order to adjust it. But I do like this a little bit better than autofocus because you're not relying on a button. You can actually make this precision and move it just slightly to make it a little bit higher or lower. And when you're done adjusting it, if you just lift up this knob, you can easily close it and get it out of the way. Now, this machine does come with the foot pedal and rotary access, and you can turn that on by pushing this button, but unfortunately I don't have the rotary access, so I couldn't try that out to see how well it works, but it definitely is an option if you want to use that. I do like that all the specs are written down on top of the machine for the Galvo, so in case you don't have your flash drive, all your settings are already handy for you right here. I do like that this machine isn't very large. It has a relatively small footprint compared to some of the other fiber lasers that I've tried out. This one actually is probably the smallest and probably the lightest weight too. So now I'll go over a few things that I think could just be a little bit better, and there's really not a whole lot of them, and they aren't really that big of a deal, but I figured I should probably point those out anyways. And the number one thing is probably this freakishly long fiber cord that's attached to it. I'm really not sure why it's that long, and it really doesn't need to be in my opinion, but it is super long, and as you can see, it just hangs off the back of my table. So second is the little tie downs that come with this to hold your material in place. Now, the problem I have with these is that there's only 2 holes, and I wish it had a full slot. That way, when I'm placing this down and I need to tie my piece down, there's not a hole right here for me to lock it into place. So if this had a whole slit on it, I can easily adjust this in any direction and not just horizontally and vertically. Now, I think my only other complaint about this machine, and it's really not that big of a deal at all, is the fact that it doesn't come with a user manual. It comes with this, which it says it's a user manual, but all it really is a safety information manual, electrical safety, material safety, and that's pretty much it. Now, you can easily go on to Omtech laser website and download the user manual, which does actually go into detail on how to get this set up in EasyCAD, so it's really not that big of a deal, but it would have been nice if it came with it. So overall, I think this machine is great and works perfectly right out of the box. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. For anyone looking to purchase a fiber laser, whether it be for a hobby or small business, I think this is a great choice. It is American made, so you can have peace of mind with that, along with Omtech having a customer service phone number and email, so you can easily reach out to them in case you need any support. They even have demo rooms across the US in case you want to check one out before purchasing. Now, this is the 60 watt Mopa compact fiber laser, but they do have numerous machines available to choose from, including CO2 machines and lower and higher powered machines, depending on your needs. This machine is currently priced at $35.99, and for a fiber laser with this quality and power, you can't really go wrong, and you won't find a much cheaper one available that you can actually rely on. So if you are in the market and looking to purchase this laser, I will put a link down in the description on where you can pick this up, along with any tools that I use, like this lens cleaner right here, or where to get the Heightmaps from for coins like this for some deep engraving or anything like that, but there will be a link down in the description for everything that you might need. Well, that's going to be it for this video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, ring the bell, get notified of all the new videos that come out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.